Okay, when I get home from the farmer's market, I immediately try to process all of the food that I'm going to need for the week as far as chopping and prepping goes. So I start with, usually I'll make a stew with last week's leftover vegetables, meaning anything that I have left over from last week that needs to get used up, I actually make that as a stew on grocery day. So most people prefer to use their freshest ingredients right when they get them. I want to use up what I already have in the fridge. So I make the stew, and that will usually last for that night's dinner, and then it can serve as leftovers for the week. Or I can freeze them if I have no intention of eating them that day, but I prep it into something that I can use for the week. So here I am making a stew with the leftover garlic from last week, and chopping that. I love garlic, so I always add way more than you think you need because I want it to have a lot of flavor. It's antioxidant, it's antimicrobial, antibacterial. It's just a super healthy ingredient that I want to integrate into my food as much as possible. And then I also include the ends, like you'll see me cutting the little ends there, and then I put them into the stock that I'm making for next week. So part of processing all of the leftover veggies from the week before includes making a veggie stock from the scraps of the leftover week or the fresh week. So there I am throwing the fresh onions from the skins, and I'm putting those into the veggie stock. This part is me chopping and prepping all of that kale and the fresh ingredients that were left over to put into the stew. So the small pot is the stew and the big pot is the stock, and that's a ton of ginger that's going to keep us healthy. So these are soaking from last night. This is going to go in here, and all of the scraps are going to go in here for veggie stock. So we're going to add some water, but you can see that this is pretty full of stuff. And then this is going to go in here as soon as this kind of like melts down a little bit. And then I'm also going to add veggie stock from last week and then top it off with some more that I made last week as well. So it's kind of cooked down a little bit. So we're going to add in the chickpeas that were just soaking overnight. I just had them sitting here, but they're soaking overnight. We're gonna add the veggie stock. So you can see me adding in the veggie stock here, and that is going to be using up the veggie stock that I made previously and then froze. So I always make my veggie stock, and I'll keep one jar about that size you saw, like that cup and a half. I'll keep that in the fridge for rice or whatever I'm making during the week, but any extra than that I put in the freezer. It's so easy to thaw, so I just pull it out the day that I'm thinking of using it. So I always have veggie stock in my fridge that's ready to use, and then I also keep a larger jar filled up in the freezer. To freeze it safely, I fill it up halfway and then freeze it on its side so that my glass doesn't rupture or break. Just a little bit left. I'm actually going to transfer that and then probably refreeze it. And then I'll reuse this one for this today. Last week's veggie stock. Celery. Just cut off all the tops and they go straight into the, I can't see it, straight into the veggie stock for tomorrow. I always like to keep fresh celery in my house because it's so good in my veggie stock and in my stews. So just always keep some fresh celery. If it goes limp, that's fine. You can still use it. Just cook it in a stew. Okay, so I forgot that I had leeks to add to my veggie stock. So you'll cut off the end here and then also trim the tops down to get rid of this portion as well, so that you're kind of left with like, this is the usable part of the leek, and then all of this is gonna go in there. So it's the tops. Okay, salad prep. Kale. Oh, you like my daughter's vision board? No COVID, no COVID. So here I am prepping all of the salad for the week. I always include one giant head of red cabbage for our salad. I include 2 bushels of kale from the farmer's market. The ones from the grocery store are usually a little bit smaller. I try to include 1 to 2 cucumbers, 2 bell peppers, and everything gets distributed between like 6 to 8 bowls so that they're already prepped in the fridge. And then I also do celery, carrots. This week has radishes. Any of the produce that I find at the farmer's market, it always includes kale, red cabbage, carrots, bell pepper, tomatoes, and as often as possible, cucumbers. Here you can see this week is prepped. You've got a little bit of everything layered in each bowl. They're stored in glass for safety reasons, so we don't have plastic leaching into our food. And finally, you'll see that we have our wraps, and this is just something I'll do extra